Did you start to count?
Welcome to the Time CNC Podcast, your go-to show for precision, efficiency, and innovation in CNC manufacturing. We're here to help you cut time in all of your CNC endeavors. Whether you're a CNC enthusiast, CAD/CAM aficionado, or into robotics, this podcast is for you. Join us as we explore cutting-edge perspectives on machining metal parts. Discover the perfect tools and streamline your production processes. Precision meets progress on the Time CNC Industry Podcast. And now, here's your hosts, Al Martins and Stephanie Bate.
Hey, Steffi, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great.
That's what we like to hear.
Well, Steph, what do we got going on today?
I've got a very exciting show. It's exploring the life of a CAD/CAM applications engineer with Stephen.
Stephen who?
How did we mess up the last name?
I do that for Steve's sake because he's heard it all his whole life.
Yeah.
It's Stephen, which I always called Steve Aughinbaugh.
Mm-hmm. You just nailed it so perfectly that I wanted to.
I've had a few years of experience on that. Well, we look forward to having Steve on. It's been a long time. And yeah, let's see what it's really like to have a life of a CAD/CAM applications engineer. Thank you, Steffi.
Bring Steve on now. Bye.
Ciao. Hey, Steve.
Hey, Al. How are you?
She was afraid to say your last name.
All right. I've heard it 1,000 times. You know, it's always wrong, so it's okay.
Hey, listen, I grew up with a name. Well, you remember my name, Aughinbaugh.
Yeah.
You know, unless you can roll an R, you can't pronounce my first name. So I've heard it all. It's Alpo, it's Alvin, it's Alves. It's, Al just became a lot easier.
It's a lot easier, that's for sure.
Absolutely. So, Steve, we've known each other for a long time.
Long time.
We were talking about it the other day. I think it's like 27 years.
Yep.
I think Stephanie was born the day we met. So that was kind of an interesting moment.
Yep.
I get asked a lot, when I'm on the road and with people and over the years, what does it take to, if I want to work for Gibbs or I want to work for a company to be an applications engineer, what it's like. And I thought this would be a great title. And you were, always a fantastic applications engineer. And I'm glad you accepted to come on the show. And
Thanks for having me.
We're happy to have you. So Steve, our regime is really to go through, 10 questions. But before we do that, tell us a little bit about you, about your history before we get too deep.
All right. Well, the history starts a long time ago. I started in the industry. I've been in manufacturing at one point or another for probably the last 45 years. I started right out of high school, did some small job shop stuff, worked in a factory for a long time. And that's where I got introduced to CNC machines, right? Yeah. Back in those days, we really didn't have CNC machines. They were more like NC machines, right?
Right, exactly.
And, we didn't have CAD/CAM systems and everything was all done by hand. I mean, that's a long time ago, right? When I first started, like I tell people when I do demos, I have 1,000 stories. When I first started this, I always tell the young guys, they say, well, what programming system did you start with? And I always say, start with a number 2 system. And they said, what is that? I said, a pencil and a paper and $150 calculator that you can now buy at any drugstore for a quarter.
Yeah.
So, teletype machines, but that's really where I got my interest in programming CNC machines. We had a bunch of lathes and mills, and they'd asked me at the company if I would be interested, and I said, sure. So we jumped into it. And that's really where I got my love for doing the CNC work. Got my feet wet with CAD cam, with Smart Cam. We had bought a wire EDM machine, and they bought Smart Cam to program it, which, back in those days, that was kind of like the thing to do, right?
Yeah, of course.
And I just fell in love with the whole CAD cam thing. I think, man, this is a really cool thing. Well, I've been doing that for forever. And one day I just started talking to my wife. I said, I think it's time for a change. I really like doing this CNC, this CAD cam stuff. It's really cool. And I answered an ad in the newspaper, believe it or not. And I took a job here in Ohio. I'm from Northeast Ohio. And they sold SurfCam and Esprit and SDRC and SolidWorks. And I moved in there as an applications guy. Learn how to do demos and all the stuff that goes along with it. I did that for, 3 or 4 years. That's when I met you. If you remember correctly, we brought you in and we grilled you pretty hard. We were building surface models back then, right? They didn't really have solid. Solid was a pretty brand new kind of thing.
It was.
I mean, we're talking that was 97 or something like that, right?
90, 95, 96.
Yeah, something like that. So solids were relatively new. And so I worked there for a little bit. And I moved on to a different job, doing some other things. Got a phone call from Rob Weinstein. Said, hey, you want to be the applications guy? And I'm like, sure. Where do I have to go? And he goes, nowhere. And here we are 25 years later. And thanks to you, Al, because I think you had a big say in that. I worked for Gibbs for 25 years and loved every minute of it. So
yeah, I remember when Rob, and in fact, I don't know who's listening right now, but I don't think I've told Rob about this podcast.
Oh.
Somebody should let him know it exists. He might like to actually follow along with it.
Yeah.
But yeah, Rob said, hey, you got to go to Ohio and meet this guy and vet him. Really? And I think it went the other way around. I think you were vetting me, to be honest. It was under a lot of pressure. All I do is remember dinner. The rest was a little bit of a fog.
The stuff we had to work with was, HPs, and we were on SDRC, and that was all Unix-based stuff.
Yeah.
So the solid stuff was very, very, very new to everyone.
Yeah, it was brand new. So
it was all surface modeling, and that's really what I was really good at. It was doing the surface modeling, and machining because of my background. So you have to remember too, my background is what really helps me in the applications, because for 20 years I ran machines. I ran them. I made fixtures. I repaired dies. I built molds. I did a lot of things. So moving into the applications field was pretty easy.
Well, sure.
I can speak to speak, or talk, however you want to say it, right?
Definitely.
When I go in to talk to a customer, I'm not an engineer. I know what's going on. So yeah,
it makes a difference. Being a tool maker, a machinist. That's why it was always said that it's a system for CNC machinists. It's not for an engineer.
That's right.
It was designed for that. There was a shirt, I remember. I don't want to say names, but somebody created a T-shirt that said, "We machine your solids." I don't know if you remember that shirt.
I do remember the shirt. Yes.
And I wore it proudly. I wish I still had it. I don't know where it went, but some of the parts of the earth didn't really like that particular phrase. That was a good time.
It was a good time.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was my journey, really. I went from the factory to being an applications guy, and I loved it. So.
Well, you had a successful career. You never had to waste a lot of time in school. you got out, you took your trade, and you ran with it.
Yeah. That's what it was good.
Beautiful. All right. Well, let's get into a little bit about the meat of the topic, as it were. So, question number one, Stephanie. Can you tell us a bit about your background and how you became? You've kind of given that. Is there any other details in question number one that you want to touch on?
No, not really. I mean, that's part of it. Just the whole life of manufacturing. So
when you were before Gibbs, were you an AE for that other company?
I was. I handled all the CNC stuff. I wasn't on the modeling side. So
Okay.
I was the cam guy, as it were. That was my role for all three products. I was the cam guy. I did the demos. I did the coding. I did a lot of the stuff. So yeah, I was the cam guy.
So that was in the Surf Cam Esprit days.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
And that was still all surface modeling and
Yeah.
nerds
All
and all the
surface
rest of
modeling back
that.
then.
Yeah.
Yeah. Surf Cam back in those days, it was all surfaces. Well,
Yeah.
thus the name.
Yeah.
So yeah.
No.
And that's where I
Yeah,
learned
they
how
were
to do
good. They were
surfaces.
actually good at surfaces.
Yes.
That was I don't know that they're still around today, are they? Or do you know?
I don't know. I think they are. I do remember. I have a funny story. If we have time for a funny
Yeah,
story.
of course. Yeah.
I remember when I first came on with Gibbs, and we used to do the reseller meetings, and I was brand new with the company, or pretty brand new, if I remember, and I was asked to do a presentation on SurfCam. And I got up there and I talked about how great their iGES translator. I don't know if you remember this.
Yeah, of course.
And I talked about how great it was, and this and that, and all the stuff that they could do. And I remember one of our guys, Jason Heiss, say that guy is not going to last.
It's funny because I called Brad today. Oh, that's bizarre.
Yeah, I remember him telling me, and he goes, "You're not going to last. You keep talking." I said, "Well, those are the facts." And that's
They had a great jacket, didn't they, with a mountain in the back of it? What was that mountain?
Oh,
do you remember? It was a mountain. Anyway,
Denali, I think.
Maybe I don't
I don't
remember.
remember exactly. Yeah,
some kind of a mountain.
yeah, I think it was.
Anyway,
Denali.
guys, in the comments,
as you get a little older, you get a little gray hair. You can forget.
or hair at all, but once you stop buying hair,
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
now there's a name to that thing. Probably Kristen will remember. Somebody will remember that, but
I'm sure.
you can always put it in the comments down on YouTube there. So yeah. All right. Well, let's get to number two. What does a typical day look like for you in this role? So back when you were in the role, what did that look like?
Well, it depends. And this is a really hard question because
It is.
It depends on it depended on what was going on at that moment in time. Okay. So if it was a normal day, let's just say it was I just going to show up on a Monday and everything is good. I usually was in the office by 7:30. Check all your email, make sure there's nothing hot, as it were, right? The guys, phone you up and say, gee whiz, or you see an email and says, I got this big demo. I need some help with building parts or got questions or those kinds of things. So that would be like the first couple hours of the day, usually just be covering those kinds of things. Then I was always involved in different projects. So it never stopped. So I might have, 5 or 6 emails that I had to take care of right away, and I would send them all off. And then you wait for the response. Was it good enough? Do you need to do more, or is it enough? But to fill the time, I would, work with development. As an applications guy, we always saw the software before everyone else did. And they would always bounce ideas off us. Hey guys, we have this new build. No one else has seen it. Can you test it? And I did a lot of those kinds of things. And those were kind of like in between. As new things came out on the market, new parts of the software like SIM and the macros and things like that, I would always try to be learning something. So always filled my day with trying to learn and keep on top of, what was going on in the field. And that could take, anywhere from, a couple hours. And then all of a sudden it's lunchtime and someone says, I have this huge demo, because, everything is last minute, most generally.
Yep.
I might work 4 hours on a project to help somebody with the demo. And that would be the end of the day. There are days when you travel, right? And those days get very long, very fast. It could be, again, it depends. It just depends on the day. If you're in the trade show mode, which, by the way, I loved trade shows.
Yeah, you're the only one.
I know, but the thing I loved about the job is meeting all the people. I've met some incredible people along the way.
Yeah,
some really interesting people. I've got lifelong friends all over the world because of that. So that's very, very cool. So
basically, what you're saying is the reason why many people want to become an applications engineer is because no 2 days are the same.
Never the same. And never the same.
That's always what made it interesting.
Always. And always, one of the things that I learned along the way is that you're the guy, right? When someone would call me and I would give them the answer, I was the guy. That was the law of the land, because that's what I said, right? I'm the applications guy. I'm the senior level guy. That's it. It's just, I don't know. I just loved it. I
remember that movie, With Me? Your chances of survival with me are this high, without me are this high. What was that movie called? Night something about, anyway, it was Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
Yeah. With me, without me. And
I mean, I never really tried to be like that. Just try to be helpful. Always tried to be helpful.
Yeah.
And whether I liked doing what I had to do or not, I was always on the game trying to be helpful. And that's,
So that's what it was about. And it made every day a different day, for sure.
And every day a different day. Some days were easy. Some days were, you want to poke yourself in the eye. That's just how it was. There were days when, or weeks when I would work on the weekends and all hours, and just to get stuff done because it needed to get done. And that's all.
All right. Well, that kind of leads us to number 3. So what are some of the biggest challenges you faced as a CAD/CAM application engineer?
Wow.
I'm sure there are millions of them, but
yeah, this is a tough one too, because it depends on what you like. For me, the biggest challenge was the traveling. At the beginning, it's fun. Hey, right? Traveling all over. And then after a while, it's like, this is brutal. It really is brutal. That was a challenge for me at some point. It was like, after you do it for 10 years and, okay, I got to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and catch a flight at 7 and, fly across the country, or, take a Saturday and fly across the pond and spend a week away from home. And, those things became challenges for me. Not huge, but, it does, wear on your brain a little bit, you're like, gee whiz, away from home. And, I have kids, so, gee whiz, you're away from your kids. And, that really is the biggest challenge. I mean, certainly
sometimes the challenges are just understanding as you said earlier, the newest feature of software that you suddenly needed to present.
Yes.
At the location you're going to. And like you say, you're on stage now.
Yep.
Perform.
That's right. You're the guy. There's no question about it. And some other challenges too are like, you prepare for, let's say you're going to go in and do a big presentation for somebody. And I'm sure this has never happened to you, Al.
Never.
Where you go in and you expect to I'm going to do a 5-axis, stand on my head, state-of-the-art machine, and you walk into the company and they make buttons. And now, as an applications guy, you have to be able to shift gears and go, what am I going to show them? Because that's not what I was prepared to do.
Yeah.
Right. And that's a challenge. It really is. It's a challenge.
Well,
but, it's customer.
It is, and you've got to learn how to sing and dance and balance all those things. And
yes, You have to learn how to sing and dance. That's a really good way to put it. Because
Yeah.
that's really what it is. It's a show.
Yeah, it is a show. Well, super. Okay, so
No, is that enough? I don't know.
no, I mean, we could go on this topic for a long.
I got a thousand things, but
There's so many. I remember one time going to Boeing, and Gibbs had just put in this magnificent iGest translator, and we had to. It was a CATIA reader that we brought in, and Boeing gave us this file, and here we are in Seattle in their offices, and it actually was an auditorium, and nobody told me about facets and what resolution they should be at. And this thing was taking like, oh my goodness, seemed like days, but it was at least 20 minutes. And then I realized I had my facets down to a thousandth of an inch, and nobody told me that you should set that resolution maybe to 10,000 so they could come in a little faster. So that's why I can commiserate with you on this. You're given a new piece of software.
Yep. Go and do this. and the thing is that when you're in that situation, you're just expected to know everything.
Yeah.
Everything. It doesn't matter if it fails. And you better know.
Yeah.
And you can't know everything. And it's funny that I still do. I still have my finger in this a little bit to help people out. And even today, people say, "How do you remember all this stuff?" And I don't know. I just do. But that's what you have to do. You have to just be on all the time, and it's tough.
Yeah,
it's tough. And then go to a trade show.
It's really like being a good pilot. Once you figure out where everything is, you always bring it back to the lowest level of your training, and you remember what that's all about.
Right.
All right, so let's jump on to number 4. How do you stay updated? Which kind of leads into your points here with the latest advancements, not just in Gibbs or Esprit or SmartCam, but in the technology.
Well, I read a lot, so I'm always on all the, I still get all the rags, the machine tool rags, and LinkedIn is really good. I follow a lot of things. When I was actually, traveling as an applications guy, we go to the trade shows, and again, I go back to the trade shows.
Yeah.
People go, "Oh my God, they suck." Yeah, but you know how much stuff I learned going to a trade show?
No.
Because you walk around and talk to the machine builders, and see what they're doing, and that's how you gather the information. That's how you could go, "Oh, have you seen this or have you seen that?" And that's how I gathered a lot of stuff over the years. Oh, I'm going to take an hour walk around and I need to learn about this new wire EDM machine that Mitsubishi came out with or something like that, and go and talk to their guys. That's how I learned a lot of things, and kept my mouth shut and just listened to people. And that's how I keep up. And with Gibbs, when it comes to Gibbs, it's constantly taking the software to as far as I could take it. You know what I mean? Can it really do this? I don't know. Let's see if it can do that. Oh, look at that. That's pretty cool. Oh, that's pretty cool. And that's how you learn. There's really no other way to keep up on it. And you have to stay on it. You can't, as an applications guy, you can't do it halfway. You have to be committed, and you really have to, dig into it and try all the different possibilities. And I always used to try to make it fail, because that's how you figure out what it can do, what it can't do. And then you carry that back to the development guys, and you go, "Guys, hey, but that's how I always learn. I always just put my foot in it and said, okay, let's go."
Well, it's interesting. That's exactly right. You always want to try and push the software and the technology to the limit, and then you can pull back a little bit to adjust. But it's not just the software, it's everything around you, isn't it? It's the tooling, manufacturing, it's a fixturing. It was Chick Vices at one point, then it was Mighty Bytes, and then it was, it wasn't just the sphere that we were in, it was all the spheres that orbited us that we had to stay on top of it, didn't we?
That's right. I mean, when you start coming out with these, what's it called, the fifth axis, these small little dovetail type vices that they come out with now. I was at some show. I just went and talked to the guys and, learned all about them. And actually really nice. And there's multiple versions. I'm not promoting them or anything. I'm just saying that was one of the ones that we used in one of the jobs that I worked on.
Sure.
And, I just went and talked to the guys. They're all pretty friendly guys. I mean, you just go talk to them and you learn about their products, and, some of them are pretty good and some of them are not so good. But you're right. And then we had to deal with the tooling guys. I remember doing the IMTS, and we were in the Mazak stand, and I forget who it was. It was over there, and we were cutting this part, and every time it hit a corner, it would chatter.
Yeah.
And they kept telling me, "Oh, it's Gibbs, it's Gibbs." I'm like, "It's not. We're using the volume mill. There's no way. There's something else." So naturally, we called the tooling guy over, and he goes, "You're running too slow. You got to turn the spindle speed way up." And sure enough, so yeah, all that stuff works together, right? Fixturing, tooling, the coolant guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everything. It's all part of it,
Yeah, the machine tool itself. So yeah, you got it right on.
And the machine tool itself, because some machines are, really, really rigid. Some of these big VTL machines are massive. And some are not. Some are not built for that, right? Some are built to do light duty work. So yeah, you just have to know what you're trying to do. You're not going to take no offense to Haas, but you're not going to take a Haas VF1 and do plunge roughing with a 3-inch shell mill. It's not going to work, right?
Yeah,
it's not going to work. Now you take their bigger machine, right? Of course, but now you take their bigger machine, and okay, then it's okay. So you have to, as a application guy, you have to know all that stuff, or at least kind of have an idea to say, oh, you can't do that with a drill press. It's not going to work.
Maybe not. Oh, but yes, staying on top of things, and ultimately when we look at our audience and we think about young guys who want to get into the industry, it doesn't have to be intimidating, but you just have to have the desire to keep learning. And today the tools are different. Not a lot of guys get magazines anymore.
Right.
So they'll use the tools they have, but ultimately I think it's really learning about the orbit that we're in beyond just the focal point that you're on, right?
Yeah, I agree 100%. It's a lot different. A lot of the younger guys that I see coming into this industry don't have the hands-on. Like I learned by turning the handles, right?
Yeah.
That's how I learned. So when I made that transition, I already knew speed and feed. And I knew all that stuff already because I did it for years. So for me, it was easy. For some of the younger guys, maybe not so much, because you have to learn a little bit different. The advantage they have, though, that we didn't have is, like Sandvik, for example, you can go to their catalog and you can buy a tool and they tell you everything you need to know. Well, we didn't have that, right?
No.
Excuse me. We didn't have that.
Well, we had it, but it was in a catalog.
Right.
And if you remember, the bookcase behind us would barely handle the weight of the 16 catalogs that were there in alphabetical order.
Right.
So, Steve, that kind of leads us into question 5. Can you share some memorable projects and success stories in your career? And I know you have many, and I'm not sure how you handpicked a few of them, but yeah, I think this would be kind of cool to hear about some of those successes.
Well, there was there's one that always sticks in my mind, and I don't know. I guess we'll call it a really good one.
Okay.
And this is one of those things, again, being an applications guy, knowing the competition, and that's the key here. That's the key behind this story. We did I went to Michigan and did a demo with one of our resellers there, and the company had a bunch of horizontal machines, and so I did help them with the initial demo, and they went back a couple of times, and then I got a call and it said, "Hey, Steve, we need you to go in there and close this deal." And I was like, oh, okay, whatever, I'll do it. So I go in there, and I knew the guys already. I'd been there a couple of times, and I said, what is the deal here? What I showed them a bunch of more stuff, and I was being set up by the competition. That's really
Mm.
what it was. I was set up by the competition. They were asking me questions that I know, because I know the competition. That's a key thing, right? I
Right.
know the competition. So they were trying to set me up to fail. Well, unfortunately, I knew better. I was already prepared, so I did all the stuff. And they asked me a question about them, and they said, we're gonna give them one more chance. If they come back in, what would you like us to do? To ask them to do? And I said, here's what I want you to do. And this is honest to God truth. Tell them to draw a square, just a geometry square, just geometry, and cut it. And they can't. And he just looked at me. He goes, what do you mean? I go, they can't. They can't bring in a DXF file and just cut it. They can't. It's not possible. And that's all I said. I said, that's all I'm going to say to you. So let's fast forward a month or so. Needless to say, we got the deal. Now they have 25 seats of software.
Nice.
So it pays to know your competition. It really does pay to know what they can do, what they can't do. And this was huge. And yeah, really, really cool stuff.
It is.
That
right?
was big. That was big. I mean, they ended. I think they started out buying 5 seats, and they ended up. I think they're 18 or 25 seats of Gibbs, which is really nice, right?
It is. I think you know, in speaking about that, it kind of lends into our last point and try to understand where we are in learning and understanding where we are in the sphere of things. And if you understand your competition as well,
Right.
it certainly helps immensely when you're in a competitive situation, because customers usually look at potentially 2 or 3 versions of software before they decide.
Right. Right. And that's what makes your questions a little bit hard, because all this stuff ties together. It's not just one thing, right? Being an applications guy is not just one thing. You just don't sit in your chair every day and run software and answer questions for everybody. It's not what you do. You do a lot of different things. And so yeah, it makes it. But yeah, that was a really great win. I mean, there's a lot of little weird stuff like that. I remember getting a call from a guy, medical guy in Michigan. And he says, dude, I can't get the finish on this thing for anything. And I was like, well, let me see the parts. And I said, have you ever tried to use the constant step over that we just came out with in Advanced 3D? So you ever tried constant step over? He's like, well, no. I said, let me explain how it works. I'll program it up and I'll send it to you. So I did that. He calls me back like 2 hours later and he goes, dude, I don't even have to polish the parts anymore. He goes, that is huge. So there's a lot of little stories like that, you know, what was it? A couple of years back, our colleagues in Germany were working on a big company. Actually, they got the sale. And I was asked to help them write a macro that would do an MTM part. And for those of you, you know, MTM, you know, a sub-spindle kind of machine, right?
Yeah, multi-axis turning kind of.
Yeah, multi-axis turning kind of stuff. And yeah, we did that. And I don't know, it was a small part of it, but at least I was part of something. So there's a lot of wins like that along the way. And geez, can't even remember half of them anymore. We just, you know, try to help people.
Exactly. And I think the depth of knowledge is also helpful. Sometimes, you know, people can sense the depth of knowledge that a tool maker or a machinist will have.
Yeah.
It came at it differently. So if you're looking at becoming an applications engineer for whatever job it might be, if you have the background that will allow you to synergize with the customer's applications. So not just, hey, I'm really good at this software.
Right, exactly.
And now he asks you about something else in the orbit, and you're looking at him with 3 eyes.
Yeah, and you know, and again, another story. So I was down in Florida, and we did a demo for a guy. He made aircraft spars, wing spars, And so, we did our dog and pony like we normally would do. The guy was pretty
Sure.
impressed. And he says to me, he goes, well, would you mind if I brought in a drawing and, could you draw this up for us?
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, sure. I never refused. I never refused to
Exactly.
do anything.
Yeah.
And sometimes I regretted it. And this time I regretted it.
A wing spar might be a little large to chew off in an hour demo.
This is what he did. He brings out this, I don't know, J-sized drawing. I don't know, his gigantic drawing. He rolls it out on the table, and he goes, there you go. I looked at it, and I'm like, this is going to take like 3 hours. I mean, this isn't like 5 minutes. He goes, that's okay. We got time.
Oh, yeah, we got all day long.
Are you kidding me? And I looked at back then, Bruce Snyder was the DM down there. I looked at him, and he goes, hey, we got time. I'm like, okay. So, kid you not, Al, 3 hours later, I drew this thing all up for the guy. And it was a small area that they couldn't machine, which we could do. It was not a big deal. And we started to talk to the guy, and he says, oh, that's pretty impressive, this, that, and the other thing. And he goes, well, how would you hold it? Well, again, because I come from the factory and I did a lot of that kind of fixturing and all kind of stuff in the tool room. Oh, I would put a pin here and do this. And the guy's like, sale. And we got the sale. So again, going back to your point of having some knowledge of what the guy's going to do. And then you work with guys like I worked with a guy, and this is a funny story. So sorry if I'm rambling.
No, that's fine.
But we always talk amongst ourselves to write a book because there's so many stories. I was working with a guy who was brand new in the business. He was the sales guy. We went into a customer, and they were doing tombstone work, right?
Yeah.
And I was talking to the owner of the owner of the business, and I was doing the demo for him, and he was talking to another guy, and this guy's trying to explain to him tombstones and all this kind of stuff. We walked out of the place, and he looked at me and he goes, "What the hell is a tombstone?" I said to him, "Listen, when you get in a situation like that, you just smile and and nod your head." Because he said, "I didn't have a clue what he was talking about."
Yeah.
We sat in a restaurant and had lunch, and I had a salt shaker, and I'm like, okay, this is what he's talking about,
Yeah.
But
Good job.
It's I don't know.
Yeah.
It's been a great ride.
Yeah, it's exciting. All right. So that brings us to number 6. What role does innovation play in your work? And how do you approach problem solving? Kind of touched on it a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I enjoy doing the macro stuff. And I think when we started to put that in and we were allowing people to write small applications and actually be a bit more innovative in what you could do with the software, I think it plays huge. Sim is another big innovation that they threw in the software, right?
Yeah.
And those things, I mean, they're very cool. I'm huge fan of both. I think that over the years, I pushed pretty hard for the simulation because, again, you fall back into what you know, right? And what you know is, if you have a machine and you have a vise and you have all this setup stuff and you crash into the vise or into the clamps, at least if you had some way to see it, right? I think one of the things that's really interesting, I think coming down the pipe is this AI stuff. I think it's going to be interesting because I've seen over the years people try to take manufacturing and just kind of like throw a block of throw an STL file into a computer and expect it to produce a G code for the machine and very unsuccessfully. So it'll be interesting to see how AI is going to play a part in this. Because it's pretty cool. But again, when you talk about manufacturing and you talk about, things like that, it's hard bringing old guys like me to that, to say, yeah, we can do that. And I say that because, I've always said you can take 10 tool makers, put them in a room, give them a drawing. At the end of the day, you'll get the same part, but everybody has their own approach. And, I know the AI stuff is just, through the ceiling, but even so, You're not going to tell a guy who's been running a machine forever, that's wrong. You're not going to do that anymore, because believe me, you're going to get pushback. And even today, I work when I do training and stuff for some of the resellers still, and I go into these shops to train the guys. The guys are all, I hate to say it, my age.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
There's not very many young guys, so it's hard to say, guys, if you just do this, it'll work better. And they're like, yeah, no, we're going to do it a different way. I did a training class for one of our resellers, and the company was making fan blades, basically, is what I could say. I'm not exactly sure what they were used for, but that's what they look like anyway.
Yeah.
And we always do it this way. I said, yeah, but if you did it a different way, it would be better. And it took them dragging through the mud, but finally they said, yeah, you know what, you're right. I'm like, but I think that's the problem when you start talking about innovation and AI and some of these other things, is that these old school guys, man, it's going to be tough. It's going to be, I've always had a pretty open mind, because I thought stuff was pretty cool.
No, but
right?
you also have to look at how are things measured? What is the metric that things are measured by? So, you mentioned an interesting point. You have these tool makers, you have these machinists in the room. Who's the winner? Ideally, every one of them gets the part done to the tolerance.
Yep.
Otherwise, immediately that would be a fail. So they all get it to tolerance. Is it the guy who does it the fastest? Is it the guy that gets it to the best finish? What is the metric that's there? Because if you imagine the guy that gets it done the fastest, we'll say that that's the quantification, but he spent $3,000 in tooling to get there.
Right.
Does that really make him the winner? So,
No.
It's interesting to see that the innovations, again, back to our spheres, is it the tooling? Is it the software? Is it the way you're holding the part? How many setups did it take you to do that?
Right. Exactly.
And what ultimately is the lowest cost to manufacture the part? Is that of relevance? Do you machine 2,000 parts a year or a month? All those things, this is what makes, the applications world so interesting, isn't it?
It does. Because it all matters. It all matters. You can take that same part and run on a 3-axis machine and run it on a 5-axis machine, and the 5-axis machine is going to make it faster because you can do more cuts without having to unchuck it. It's probably going to be more accurate. It's all those kinds of things, right? Like with MTM machines, right? With these multiple spindle machines. I ran one when I was back in the factory. We had one, and it was accurate because you could pick the parts off and put it back in, and it's in the same spot. And you don't have to worry. So some of the stuff is really good. Well, you're going to have guys, kicking and screaming. I'm really interested in the AI stuff. I think from what I've seen it do other things, this could be pretty cool.
It will be, and it certainly will affect the manufacturing world. There's no question about it.
I think so. But still got to make the chips, no matter what. No matter what, we won't go there.
Well, yeah, no, exactly. But, you start to see situations where everything was about, and again, we're on this topic, innovation and what we're doing. But if you look at it carefully, we've been long enough in the industry to see that, from 1985, we'll say, to, I don't know, to 2000, and we'll say 15, somewhere in there, those magical years, the software kept getting better, new features, new functions, new abilities to take advantage of new tooling and all of that kind of stuff. And I'm going to say from 2015 to where we are today, a lot of the CAD/CAM software hasn't really been innovating. In fact, I would say if you look at some of the subscription-based software and the rest of it, I would say the software is going backwards. Because it's going backwards because there aren't balance and checks that of machinists and tool makers anymore.
Right. Right.
Now, we've got a bunch of young people in the industry who don't have that background, who don't understand, we got to start the tool from here, or we got to understand how the chips are flowing. We got to listen to the machine and see what's going on.
Yep.
So they're living actually in some cases with this subscription software that's almost free. Oh, but it does it magically. Yeah, but it doesn't do it well.
Right.
But they don't know the difference.
And they don't know the difference. Right. No, I agree. When I was in the factory, I would be in my office and I was running a department that we had 3 machines, and I could sit in my office 100 feet away, and I could tell you if that machine was cutting right. I'd walk out there and go, something's wrong. No, yes, the inserts are bad. Change them.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate, but even talking to some of the older guys that I've been training with and meeting along the way here in these last couple of years, I've been out training, and they say the same thing. It's lost. That art form is lost, and really is an art form. It really is, because with a scene, like when you were doing manual work, you could kick the side of the machine and get it to move a thou. You can't really do that with CNC. But again, these are the things that are lost. They're just lost.
Yeah. Absolutely.
The inserts are chattering. I can't bore the hole because the inserts are chattering. What do I do?
So yeah, to your point, AI is going to make some changes in our industry, but it's not going to cut the chips yet. It doesn't. The machines aren't going to make themselves yet. It's coming, but maybe not quite yet.
I think it's coming, but I think it's not quite yet. It's like I could say it's like 3D printing. It's coming, but it's not there yet.
Yeah.
It's just not there.
No.
And it'll be cool. But,
all right, so let's talk about number 7. How do you collaborate with the departments or teams in your company?
When I was actually working for Gibbs, we collaborate all the time with development. It was always together with Daniel or with Luis, and me and Luis spent a lot of time together in California. Well, he's in California, but we were always on the phone together. We always collaborated. We always, hey, this doesn't seem, what do you think about this? Maybe we should change that. It was really nice. I have to give my hats off to those guys. There's some pretty brilliant men out there that they listen to you. A lot of times I'd go in there and I'd kick them around a little bit and drag them around the parking lot, but they would listen to you. So there's a lot of really good, smart men there at Gibbs that, do a lot of really, really good things for us. And they always listened, do they always do everything that we wanted? Of course not, but at least they listened to us, and, some things got shelved and some things got fixed better. And always collaborated. I was never afraid to walk into anybody's office and go, hey, come here, let me poke you in the eye and get this thing to work properly, right?
Hey, I'm from Ohio. I'm going to beat your ass. Get this thing done.
It was always a really nice way to sit around a room and just shoot ideas. And again, being on the inside, which you were for a while, you know how that goes. For me, it was different because I brought something different to the table. I wasn't just a sales guy. I said, guys, I have to stand in the oil and I have to make sure this stuff really works for these guys. But no, we always collaborated all the time. It was always phone calls, emails. And when I was out there, it was meetings after meetings, just to catch up and make sure that things are going down the right path. And my hats are off to those guys. They always were very, very nice to me, and they're brilliant guys. I don't know what else to say about it.
Well, each one of us, brought a different perspective for sure. Sometimes we had, conflicts based on ideals of what something should do. We would bring something back and we would say it's a bug, and somebody would say, well, it's not a bug. It's exactly the way the software is designed to work. Oh, well, that's interesting.
That's interesting.
Maybe we should discuss that a bit further. Yeah. Maybe that isn't the way it should work. But yeah, working as a team in this situation and being applications, you talked about sales a little bit. ultimately it does touch on sales. No matter what you do,
Absolutely.
you have sort of that hat on either side of your head, don't you?
Right. You do. You have to play both sides of the fence. I mean, you really do. You have to be that guy. A lot of times when we talk about sales, a lot of times when I'd be out doing the demo, sometimes the sales guys would get mad at me because I would say, listen, we can't do this, and do you really want angry customers? You're going to say, oh yeah, we could do all this stuff. And no, you can't. Okay. So let's be honest with people. I've always been that way.
Yeah.
100% across the board. No, we can't really do this. We can do it, but it's going to take some, I'd rather just say, listen, it's nice to meet you, other than, because I always tell the resellers, why I would do that, because guess who's going to have to deal with it? Me. Because the applications, you're going to start throwing stuff. Well, hey, we need to do this and we need to do that. And you said, and I'm like, no. So you do have to walk that line a little bit.
Exactly.
Okay, it's fun. It's a fun job.
It is. It was, I think one of my challenges in the early days, being an applications guy, even with in the days of machine tool sales, was not to get too far in the weeds.
Yep.
Understand the audience you're with. Is it literally the machinist, or is it the guy who's buying the machine? And the guy who's buying the machine, he's writing a check. He doesn't care about feeds and speeds and what it's going to do effectively. As long as his machinist is happy, we'll write you a check.
Yep.
So
know your audience. That's the key. That's the key. And know who the players are when you're sitting in that room. And I've been in a lot of those situations where, you get one guy in the room and he's gonna give you a hard time.
It's turning the screws.
I've been there.
Absolutely.
But there's ways around it.
Oh yeah, of course.
Figure out ways around it. There's some techniques you can use as applications guy. I remember being in a room full of guys, and there was one guy in the back of the room, and he was relentless. And there was a couple of guys in the front, and they were really interested in what I had to say. And I kept looking at them, those two guys, going, pretty cool, huh? Pretty cool, huh? Pretty cool, huh? Finally, one of the guys turned around and told the guy in the back room, he goes, if you're not going to shut up, leave. Let the guy do his job. That's why he's here. Yeah. Those are some tricks that you learn along the way when you're doing demos. Know who's in the room and know what you can get away with, because sometimes that's what you have to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's polite. Nobody knows the difference.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Which kind of leads us into number 8. What advice would you give someone aspiring to become an application engineer?
Well, there's a couple things you need, I think. First of all, you need to have a lot of patience. That's one thing you have to have.
Yeah.
You have to have patience, and you have to learn how to be really polite to people, even when you want to poke them in the eye. And that's something that you really, really have to be able to do. Because some guys are going to test you, and if you can't maintain that professionalism and all those kinds of things, dead in the water. They'll take you out in a second.
Yeah.
And I've been in some really, really, really bad situations. And the best advice when you get into a bad situation, like somebody screaming at you for 10 minutes, which I've been in that situation, and you just stand there and listen, and you just look at him and go, okay, you feel better? And that's what I said to the guy. You feel better? He's like, yeah. I go, okay, cool. Let's solve the problem. Yeah. And that's how you have to maintain that. I remember being rescued one time, and this is the closest I've ever come to telling the customer he was an idiot. I was doing a West Tech.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Guy comes up to me. I'll just tell this really quick because I know we're getting short on time.
Okay.
Guy comes up to me and he goes, can you guys read DXF files? And I said, absolutely. He says, okay, show me. So, we had the stations. I start bringing up a file, and he goes, no, I want to see my files. I'm like, okay, no problem. Did you bring a drive or a CD back then? This was years ago. He's like, well, no. I said, well, if you did, I could read your files. He goes, really? He goes, I cannot, and this is honest to God truth. Can't make this up. He says, I cannot believe you as software company don't have my files on your computer. I don't know what to say. I've been an application guy now for probably 10 years. I don't know what to say. I looked at the guy and I said,
oh my God.
I don't even know who you are. I don't know your company. I don't know anything. Well, and he went on, and this is going on now for like 10 minutes. I couldn't convince him that he finally, Rob Weinstein, the vice president of the company, who knows that much about, right, comes over to me and goes, hey, what's going on, Steve? And I looked at him and I go, this guy wants to see DXF files. And I pushed myself away and I walked away.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So patience is something that I think you're really going to have.
Yeah, I think you're right. That is an interesting point. Boy, that's an interesting story, I must say. Not all kinds of alarm bells of spy software and,
no, it's
smuggling into his computer and knowing everything that's on it. I don't know.
I know it was, I never experienced that before.
No. Well, that's okay. You hear some of the questions, that anyway, politicians have at some special forums where they're talking about, do you own the internet?
Yeah. I mean, it was so bizarre that that sticks in my brain. These are those things that kind of stick in your brain. I think the other thing that, for me anyway, I think as an application, if you want to be an applications guy, is you have to be all in. You can't do half-assed. Sorry about the language, but you can't. You have to be dedicated to it. You're going to have to understand that some days you're going to work 5 hours. Some days you're going to work 18. It just depends.
It's not a 40-hour week.
Dedicated to the job, that's what it takes. It's I loved the job. I loved it. And there were times when I did that. I worked, pulled all-nighters, as we say, right?
And it's not just all-nighters. It's weekends in the airport. You've dedicated your whole life to this occupation.
Right, to this occupation, and that's really what that's what I did. I dedicated myself to it. Yeah. I loved it. I loved helping the people. You got to love helping people. That's another thing you really do, and you got to be a bit personal, right? Or personable is what I meant to say. Yeah. I mean, you got to smile. You got to laugh. You got to tell some jokes. You got to let them remember you. Somebody told me that a long time ago, that's what you have to do. And that's what I always tried to do. Even when we would do these big rollouts and I'd be in front of 200 people, always be loud, always be moving around. People remember that.
Oh yeah.
And they come back to you and and I had a guy come up to me after one of these and he goes, I only come to these to hear you speak. And I'm like, really? Well, that's a huge compliment because I love doing this, right? And it's just teaching people about the software. So
you were always unforgettable. It was always good to have you up. That's for sure. People loved it.
We try.
People loved it. All right, so let's get to number 9. How do you see the future? We'll get to number 9 about how do you see the future of CAD/CAM technology evolving?
How do I see the future? I don't know. I really don't. With AI and with all the subscription stuff, it's hard to say. It's hard to say what's going to happen. I mean, more and more people are going to 5-axis because the machines are cheaper. That stuff is getting a lot more cool. You can do a lot more things with it. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see. I really can't even. The AI is what to me is what's going to be fascinating.
I think the AI again is one of those things. It's the variables are too complicated to really resolve. We have to deal with what's happening now, and companies have to manufacture with what's going on right now.
Well, I think too. I see a lot more of the CAD/CAM guys working with the tooling people. I think that's going to be key in the future because some of these tools now that they have are crazy. And they do some really, really nice things. So I think that's a really good thing. Whereas before it was like, hey, just throw them over the wall and hope for the best.
Well, exactly.
I think that's a good thing as well.
When we look at things like, when it close to me is Tool Manager IQ.
Yeah.
And we've integrated AI And we've integrated AI as an assistant. We call it Fritz, because Fritz was my first guy that I learned, machining from. I apprenticed under him. Him and a British guy. But ultimately, what's the tap drill size for, 1/2" 13?
Right.
Questions that you may not readily have the answer for, before we go to the, machinery handbook, volume 17 or volume 12, whichever one it was, and try to get those specifications. AI is really good at that.
Right.
Why not use that, in your daily scenario where you've got to get an answer quick. It's kind of like having your own personal assistant.
Right. Well, and they're really good at doing all the mathematics because, behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And I'm not a developer, but behind the scenes, it's all mathematics. That's all it is, right? It's just math. So, and AI is really good at that. And that could really help in making the calculations for the tool paths and all those kinds of things.
Absolutely. Right? And, just the variances in surface finish and the rest of it, getting questions answered real quick. What's the best tool, that's the best, 7/16 end mill that I can use to cut in titanium,
right.
2.5 inches deep.
Right.
And up comes a whole list of tools that might serve that purpose.
That's right. And it's really good for that. And I think it's going to help. I think it's going to help the generation coming. It's interesting that I bought myself a small router CNC machine.
Right.
And I got on some of their forums and stuff, and not slamming any of the guys, but I set my machine up, and in 5 minutes it was running because that's what I've done my whole life. And then I read some of the forums, and they don't even know how to set the tools. And you're like, well, AI might help with that. They may be able to say, use this tool because they don't know the speeds and feeds. What am I going to use in here and there? And I know because I just know. Yeah. I've been doing it for so long. So.
Yeah. What's an edge finder?
Yeah, exactly. What's an edge finder?
I don't know. If you guys know what that is, put it in the comments.
What's an edge finder?
Let us know what that is.
Wow.
All right. So we're on our last question, Steve.
Okay.
Can you discuss the impact of CAD/CAM applications on the manufacturing industry and how they contribute to the efficiency of and precision?
Well, I think there's some things you just can't do manually, and you just can't. So the CAD/CAM stuff, when it came along, it allowed us to do things like, be very consistent in all the stuff that we were doing. If I didn't make, 15 of these parts, because I always worked in the tool room. So we never ran, we had a CNC, but we never did 100,000 parts. We, do 10. And that helped us, you don't have to, manually make 10 or grind them or whatever. That really helped. And the precision stuff, we worked on a huge project that that's really what we wanted to do. And it worked really well, where we were able to take parts and machine them and turn them over and put them in different machines and machine the other sides. And without even having to check them, they were coming out almost perfect. So, yeah, I think it's really, really, you need it now. I don't think you could do it any other way.
Steve, in our world, of course, at CAM Solutions, we'll say, what we find has been lost is, picking up the phone and talking to an applications engineer. Hey, Steve, I have a problem. Can you walk me through it? There's fewer and fewer applications engineers in the market, and AI is trying to take over that. But we see it in every discipline that we're in. When you find a key guy that can help you resolve an issue quickly, because you may have a $500,000 or $1 million machine tool sitting there, waiting for a solution. That might be a tooling solution. It might be a CAD/CAM solution. It as you say, it might even be a coolant solution. Whatever it is, picking up the phone and actually listening to a human and getting to somebody, we're really proud of that. I think we're one of the few companies around. And I know you have a company called Blue Chip, and that's really essential in saying, "Hey, can you help me with this?"
Yeah. And that's, I mean, I did that for years and years and years and years until I was told to stop.
Helping people, that's bad.
Yeah, it's not bad. We
Of course
did
it's not bad.
rollouts.
We know that.
Yeah, we know that.
Yeah.
We did all the rollouts, right? Where we travel from city to city to city to city.
Yeah.
Sure. Was it expensive? Yes. Was it hard on you? Yes. Was it worth it? Absolutely. Because we got more business from being in front of people, talking to people, shaking their hands, letting them know that there are humans behind our software. It's not just a CD that you're getting in the mail. There's actually people behind it that actually know how to use it and do it well. So
absolutely.
I agree with you, Al, 100%. That the personal interaction thing. I mean, sure, the internet, this is cool.
Yeah.
It's cool. But, to be in a room of 200 people and talk about Gibbs and answer their questions, it's satisfying. For me, it was always very cool.
Yeah.
And it was able to help.
I agree. And again, whether that application is in our industry or in any industry, when you become proficient, not only in the specific company you're working with, but in the industry that you're working with, you become indispensable, not only to the company, but to the industry.
Yeah.
And I think you amplified that in your career. And I was always honored to be with you.
Yeah. Well, it was always great to work with you, Al.
Yeah.
We tried, and that's all you can do. At the end of the day, it's like I tell my kids, you do your best. That's all you can do. You can control what you can control, and you do your best, and good things could happen.
Absolutely.
And that's how I've always done things.
Yeah. Great
Be
thing.
kind and help people. I don't know. Even now in my little company that I do, my wife says, are you charging him for that? And I'm like, no, he's a good guy, and he just needs some help. It's not about that. For me, it's not about that. It never was about that. It's about making sure people are successful and doing the right thing. So,
yeah, Zig Ziglar always said that, right? You give enough to people what they need, it'll all come back to you eventually.
Eventually, it's okay if it doesn't. Again, I've had a great career. I love the software. I've met many, many awesome people over the years. There's a great group at Gibbs Cam, all the people. So,
great group.
It's a great group.
Well, Steve, thanks for joining us today. It was really good having you on.
All right. Well, I hope I was able to enlighten something about what I've done over the years.
I think our audience is going to love listening to this podcast and understand a little bit more about not only just our industry, but just being an applications guy.
Yeah.
And being good at what they do, they're being valuable. Yeah.
Just, again, be kind, be nice, and just be helpful to people, What does Arnold Schwarzenegger say? Be kind, be happy, be useful, or something like that. He's got a motto. And that's how he lives. And just be kind to people and be useful and help them out when they need it. Believe me, it goes a long way. You might say, oh, gee whiz, I don't want to take this phone call from this guy because I know it's going to be half an hour. But at the end of the day, that guy's happy and he's grateful that you took his call. There's no question about it.
Absolutely. Well, Steve, thanks again.
All right, Al.
We'll have you back, I'm sure. And
thanks for having me.
Thank you. We'll get
buddy.
Stephanie back on here.
All right. Take care, everyone. Thanks again.
Thank you, Steve. Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers. Hey, Steph. I think you're muted. I'm not sure 100%, but
every time it gets me, one of these days, I will know it's muted.
Well, good to have you back. I hope you enjoyed the show today.
Absolutely. It's a great one.
Yeah, it was nice. It was really nice to go through this with Steve and cover all the disciplines along the way.
Lots of history there, which is awesome to see.
Can you tell us about next week's episode? Or
Yes, I can.
2 weeks from now, our next episode?
Put put it on the screen too, but we have Meg Lee, and we're doing Unlocking Efficiency, the Slow Adoption of Tool Management Systems in USA. Very excited for it.
Yeah, me too. We look forward to having her on.
A fellow girl to have on.
Yeah, she'll be the first girl we've had on the show besides you. So yeah, that'll be I'll be outnumbered for the first time.
Yeah.
All right, Steph. Well, thanks for being my co-host. And we'll see you again soon. We'll sign us off.
We'll roll the outro and then we'll call it a day. Good night, everyone.
Steph. Good night, everyone. Ciao.
Thank you for tuning in to the Cutting Time CNC Podcast, where precision meets progress. We hope you've gained valuable insights into CNC manufacturing and are inspired to optimize your processes for efficiency and innovation. For more resources and to connect with Al or Stephanie, visit us at cuttingtimecncpodcast.com. The link is in the show description. Remember, the journey doesn't end here. Keep exploring, keep learning, and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible in CNC manufacturing. Make sure you follow the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite player to get notified about new episodes of the Cutting Time CNC Industry Podcast.